Welcome back to the Heads Together podcast. This week, I'm getting my head together with the amazing Lauren Jones. Lauren is the founder and CEO of Box Creative. She is equal parts artist and scientist. She's trained in pure design, and Lauren is completely chomping at the bit to share the power that brand and design can have on the world. She's also one of my beloved business coaching clients. So I am beyond thrilled to have her on the show, and for you to share in her magic. Welcome to the Heads Together podcast. I'm Jill Mokes, and I am obsessed with cutting through the noise when it comes to growing your business. Each week, via intimate coaching conversations and inspirational stories, I share what it really takes to get the results you want in a way that feels right to you. I am all about attracting higher ticket opportunities, building authentic relationships, and creating the abundant, full-fat version of your dream business. I mean, how many of us have beavered away creating a light version of what we really want? The thing is, I honestly believe when you're outstanding at what you do, there is no limit to what you can achieve. So, are you ready to put our heads together and make it happen? Let's go. Lauren, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Jill. Nice to see you.
Oh my goodness, thank you for coming on.
Oh, it's a
This
pleasure.
is so good.
I'm so excited.
I mean, it's been ages since we spoke.
Yes, indeed.
So Lauren is one of my amazing business coaching clients who I just adore working with. So this will be a bit of a love-in, you are a pleasure to work with. So
The feeling's mutual. This is just going to be a chat, I'm sure. I hope.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I know all about you, but for our audience, tell everyone a bit about yourself. Oh, I sounded like Cilla Black then. Tell everyone
What's your name and where you're from?
What's your name and where you're from? That will not resonate with everyone across the pond, but if it doesn't, Google it.
That's it. That's
An
it.
absolute cultural diamond.
Yes. Yeah. Absolute legend. So Cilla, I'm Lauren Jones. I'm based out in Essex, so near your kind self. And I'm the founder and director of Box Creative Limited. I started in pure design, but now I run a creative agency and we work with everything from female startups, purpose-led organisations through to huge non-profits and foundations. We really tackle everything around branding, design, voice work, and everything to support them to up their game, to cut through noise and to stand out in the world. Being unignorable is my thing. So being an unignorable brand.
Oh God. I just love that, being unignorable, because that is it, isn't it? That's the purpose of branding.
Yes,
be unignorable. Absolutely. I love it. Just thinking about that, that's a wide spectrum of clients potentially that you work with. What do they tend to all have in common?
Well, I mean, the needs for brand as an overarching sort of concept, it doesn't differ from scale or industry or vertical. Essentially, if you look at commercial side through to non-profits, they still have an audience base, they still have shareholders, stakeholders, or boards, and they still have people to answer to, they still have people to appeal to, there's still a product, and I'm using inverted brackets, that they have to kind of sell or entice people to take action, instill action in people, be it by a pair of pants, or if it's to donate money or attend an event or to join a rally, whatever it is, there's always a call to action. And so that's where branding and brand step in and instill that action and create that emotional connection with people. So for me, what's fun is that it is a broad spectrum and that every day is different. My processes, my frameworks have been honed over the years, and I use the same methodology for every single client, and it just works.
Yeah. Would it be fair to say that, like, your clients tend to be quite purpose driven as well, and so there is that common ground across them?
Yes, definitely. I mean, the female businesses I tend to work with, there's a lot in personal development space. I also support a few organisations that work in empowering female entrepreneurs as well. So, for example, worked with a fantastic app last year that supports a niche in the market of trades, so plumbers and electricians and carpenters and plasterers that are females. It's a very small, like 4.7% of the industry, and they've created an app to find those female trades. So it's still a commercial business, but it's very purpose driven. They're getting a lot of traction and support and investment because it's quite a unique proposition. Yeah, and everything also down to women who are setting up organisations that are really specialised in DEI, so diversity, equity and inclusion consulting, which should be ingrained in every organisation now. So everything through to people that do surf therapy in Costa Rica to support women who are business leaders and everything in between. So it's great.
Surf therapy, did you say? Yeah. Surf therapy. That's amazing.
Yeah. What we can learn from the ocean and discipline and balance and all sorts. So there's some fantastic entrepreneurial women out there doing great work that is really adding not just to the economy but to women as in large. So it's great to work with them. Feel very honoured with my client base.
I would imagine that makes what you do incredibly fulfilling. Why this business? What is it that appealed to you about coming into this area? Yeah,
I mean, as I said, I came from pure design background. I was in a workshop and making things and crafting and creating. And I landed a role in interiors in a brand agency. And that was my first, I was very wet behind the ears. I was just out of graduation and things. And it was my first introduction to this word called brand and branding and brand experience and questioning audiences and things like that. And it was all very, very new to me. I was so intrigued in particular about the brand culture piece and how we could go from talking to clients around what they wanted their business to do. And my role was to create that as a physical environment, an interiors exercise. And it was just that process of taking this sort of high level concept and turning it into something very tangible and working with the graphics team. And then there was a digital team and then the experience team and then the environments team. It just felt so holistic and it made a lot of sense to me and it really interested me. And I didn't necessarily want to be just doing one bit of that puzzle, the story, the journey for the customer. And that really kind of sparked my love affair. And then over the years, I went back to study, got a master's in brand strategy and design management because a lot of stuff I was doing was very intuitive and I wanted to back it up with some actual methods and learn about people that have done this already and the experts in the field. And it's kind of grown from there really. So my experience in pure design and that level of understanding the production and what's involved in creating something, be it in a workshop, be it on a computer, be it an environment, whatever it is, has really put me in good stead to building businesses and building brands for people and understanding that whole story. So it's been quite a nice evolution for me.
So I think what's interesting is that mirroring of your journey, your approach to working with clients in terms of their brand, focusing slightly differently depending on where they are on their journey. Talking real basics for you, and I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but what is brand? If you had to really give us the essence to brand.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So there's a couple of definitions that I always draw on. And it's a really great question. And I think it's largely misunderstood. Brand is the Marty Neumeier, who's my mentor, and an absolute brand hero and had decades of experience. He describes it as the gut response that you have to a business or a company organization. So it's a very emotional reaction. It's that the gut feeling that you have towards it. So Jeff Bezos describes it slightly differently in saying it's what people say about you when you leave the room, basically. It's what are people talking about you? What's that reputation? And I would say it's largely the reputation that precedes you and that leaves you, that sits in the hearts and the minds of the customer. And so largely you can't really dictate, you can't tell someone, I can't tell you, Jill, this is what the brand of Box Creative is. You gather that information from your experience of me and our services, and you create that own experience of what that brand means to you in your heart and mind and in your gut. And so as a business, that's really important to know, because you can't dictate it, but you can curate it. You can actually be intentional by consistently showing up, by having the same messaging, by having clarity on that, by having professional buttoned up branding at every single point, by looking united front, by constantly reassuring and showing up professionally and consistently. I have a Mary Poppins thing, persistent and consistent in every way. That's what branding should be about. That's how you build a brand. It's my Mary Poppins approach.
That's adorable.
Because it's important. That's the unsexy side, but you have to guard your brand. You have to go out. And once you have that concept, yes, it's flex and it grows and it changes and adapts because everything else around it does too. But in order to gain that trust with people and build that brand takes time. And so that's the kind of the concept of brand. But most people think that brand is branding, which is an active thing, a branding, like marketing, advertising. They're activations. They are taking this concept and taking it to market. So the branding is the visual and verbal side. So it's the messaging, it's the logos, it's the colors, the fonts, the website activations. The advertising is, your routes to market and channels and where you show up and how you activate or entice your audience. They're very active things, and it's just separating the two. We focus on building the brand story first, and the marketing and branding stuff comes off the back of that. Now, I know some people out there would argue otherwise, and I don't want to get into that branding versus marketing argument, because you go on LinkedIn and it's everywhere and it's boring. They sit side by side. They both need each other. They both have very different roles, but they do get blended sometimes, which is just a confusion.
Yeah, I agree. I think they are completely different things.
Yes.
But they do. They're neighbours.
They're neighbours.
They're not one being.
No, absolutely. And I think that understanding and experience of branding or marketing or advertising into brand, that's what evolves as you grow in your business, because you start to see you go up in layers of kind of the appreciation of what these layers of brand and the higher value of that concept means to your organization, to your team, to your partners. That's what I love, is that you can start with the startup. There's a naivety there in terms of but first I'll find out how to do it. Like, there's a lot of how-tos, like, how do I register a business? How do I create a logo? How do I build a website? How do I register a company? Like, all these questions. And there's lots of resources out there that can support you. And there's tons of stuff out there and tools that can help you get there. And also support networks. I mean, I run a network called Girls That Get Shit Done, which is for people in the industry, females in the industry that are either looking to go freelance or they're running their business, and we just support each other in every way that we can. And there's a lot out there to help you with those first few steps, or even indeed if you're already entrenched in the industry.
Yeah, and Girls That Get Shit Done, actually, we'll put a link to that community in the show notes for anyone who's listening.
Oh, please.
It's a great community. It's very engaged and active. It's one of the I feel like, and it's not on Facebook. Shouldn't we? It's not a Facebook group. This is a separate community. It's one of those really genuine ones where it's got real nice people in it.
Really
who talk to each other and help each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like nice people.
That gets shit done.
Both of us have a similar mantra when it comes to business, which is quite simple, which is just don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick. It kind of works.
It does. It's a really simple rule.
Simple rule.
Yes.
It really works every time. So if that's of interest, I will put that into the show notes.
Yeah, I'll say it's free and it's on Mighty Networks, and we meet every week for coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's informal, isn't it? It's a coffee chat, really, but it's a great resource for help too, where people can reach out. Like you say, when you're in that startup phase where everything's a question, how do I do that? How do I create a logo? How do I do this? How do I do that? And I think communities like yours are so important at that phase of business, because it can be a lonely journey at the beginning.
It's a lonely journey throughout, I'd actually say, if you're a business leader. It really is.
You're right.
And just as well, not just, there's no just about it. If you're a freelancer too, you're still running your own little empire. You're still in charge of your own destiny. And there's still the same questions. Like, how do I market myself? How do I present my portfolio? What clients do I want to attract? Like, all the same questions. And this all comes down to brand too. So that's the kind of tentative beginning stage. And I think that, the next evolution is when you take that first step and you go, either it's this, and I hate the phrase side hustle, but if it's a side project and you're kind of venturing into it and testing the waters, and maybe the next stage is startup, where it's about stuff. Then you need stuff. You need a message. You need a product. You need, by and large, everyone needs a website. You need some sort of visual identity, and you need the offer. And I think that sometimes they miss a trick there by just taking a beat and asking some of the questions that they think are beyond them at that stage, in terms of really understanding their audience, trying to get a vision statement and a purpose statement or a mission, whatever's suitable for you and however you want to word it. That, lots of people have slightly different wording for those statements, and also values, things like that. Like, what do you really care about as an organization? Why would someone pick you over somebody else? And those things that lots of people think are quite fluffy actually can be very, very a real asset to the organization. They can be differentiated. Well, they're largely differentiating, and they can really help with people picking you, be it talent or partners or investors, over somebody else that has got the same product and service.
Right.
So I think like taking a beat and investing a bit of time in that right at the beginning really helps, rather than just jumping straight into, I just need a website, which I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that in my life. I just need a logo. I just need a website.
I think
change your mindset.
I think it's a bit like, and this happens in kind of the back end of the business as well. I think it's a really similar problem here with startups, particularly, where people feel like they're over egging the pudding if they go too deep into brand foundations. Similar, when I suggest to people who are starting a business, start as you mean to go on and start creating SOPs, standard operating procedures, and they'll say, "Well, but it's just me."
Yes.
Yeah. And my reply to that will be, and until you do, it will
only be
you, because it will be so difficult to get anyone else in to help. So I think there's quite a parallel there with that. I think people almost feel like it's too over the top to go that deep into the background of their brand or that foundational work around their mission and their purpose and that kind of thing. But it really isn't, is it? In fact, it's the perfect time to start right.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not a huge Jeff Bezos fan. I don't know why I'm spouting him again, but he said, I'm sure it was him that said, what you do on day one of your business affects what you do in year 10. And I think that that's a really valuable piece of advice, that how you step out sets the bar and sets the intention for the trajectory of your business. And I can be testament to that. I set out in my business and I didn't want to not appeal to anyone. I was like, I need work. I want clients. I'm not going to discriminate against anyone. I didn't niche. And as a result, really, you could see in my branding, it was pretty blah, and it was it wasn't exciting. It wasn't enticing. It was very safe. And I look back at it now, I'm going, my God, what was I bloody thinking? Because there was safe. No confidence. It was safe, and there was no confidence behind it, because equally that's where I was at. And so over the years, I've stepped more and more into a niche, which again is sort of, we can talk about in a bit when you grow your business, that really the value of that. And then taking everything around it. So the tone of voice, the branding, the offerings, and really going deep into that and having full confidence that, no, this is what I'm about. This is who I'm for. Understanding equally, this is who I'm not for. And that's absolutely fine. And stepping into it. And what's happened once I made that change, and that for me was kind of my first step into Mark 2 of the business, is it's completely now, like 3 years later, a different business, a different feel, different clients. I have you. I would never have had a coach or thought I needed a coach. We have a team and we have amazing clients that are coming in, and it was making that step, which is a bit of a tentative step. To cut things out of the offering, or to be niche and just to be very focused, can be scary for people because you think you're going to say no to business, but it does the opposite. It says yes to lots more business of the right business. So yeah, I think there's never a wrong time. There's always a right time to invest in those brand foundations.
Absolutely. I just couldn't agree more. And I think you just touched on really, I suppose, what segues nicely into that next phase after startup, which is that realization that you're not for everyone.
Yeah.
You're not.
And that's okay.
And it's okay. In fact, it's absolutely as it should be.
Yes.
Because there will be someone that is for them, and that's who they should be working with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or buying from, or learning from,
Yeah. There's a sea of people out there offering the same services, offering the same products that you do. It's same for me, same for you. And the only way to really get to the audience that's right for you is just to scream at them, like have one person in mind, and just every bit of content, every bit of writing, every visual you create, it's like, it's for her, it's for him, it's for them. And being really very intentional about that means it's going to scream at them. They'll see themselves in that, rather than a sea of maybe it's for them and we're for everyone. And,
right.
It just doesn't work. It just really doesn't anymore.
Yeah. It's being unignorable.
Yes. Yeah. To the right people. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's anti-generic. It's almost like it's having that courage to make a stand for something.
Yes.
Just sticking that stake in the ground and saying, no, this is who I'm for.
Yes.
And doing it loudly and proudly. Yeah,
absolutely. And make sure everything else that follows through. But the one thing I would say with that is it has to be authentic. And I know it's another bloody buzzword, but it has to be true. It has to be completely true to you. I was doing a workshop yesterday, and we were talking about personal brand with non-profit leaders. And we were saying that they struggle to separate themselves from the organisation because often they've started it and it's so entrenched in them. And I was like, but when you find your voice, everything becomes so much easier because it's authentically yours. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to hide behind jargon and like layer it with buzzwords and stuff or overly technical information. Like you just talk human to human because there is an authenticity to it. And that's the same for businesses, the same for brands too. It's when you get that confidence to be what it is and have that clarity, that's when things really start to change.
Yeah, you're so right. Do you know what? I think, tell me if you agree with this, but I can spot a mile off a contrived opinion. So in other words, I can tell when someone has literally sat there and thought, okay, I need to make a stand for something. I need to stand up and I need to have this persona. And I can just spot it a mile away when it's just been completely contrived and constructed to tick a marketing requirement box or a branding requirement box. And it just, for me, it just doesn't work. So I think that authenticity is non-negotiable, and it's a buzzword for a reason, because it's so bloody important.
It's true. It is true. And I would always urge yourself, if you're putting content out, post out, captions, whatever it is, if you read it back and there's an ick, like, try and look at it very objectively. And if there's anything like that, then just skip it. It's far more valuable to have less stuff out there, less content, less shit for people to kind of troll through and scroll through. That's more quality, more authentic, and more suitable for the audience, and more value for them. I mean, they're only going to read it or engage with it if it's valuable for them. If it's just a load of crap, then just skip it. Just don't even worry about it. But again, the more confident you get with stepping into the voice and the brand and authentically, then that gets less and less.
Absolutely. Before I post anything on social media or in an email or anything, I run it through is this actually what I think? Because I think, we consume, as business owners, we consume so much. And I think we do absorb other people's opinions, and there can sometimes be a tendency, especially if your ideas are feeling a little depleted and you're trying to create some content, there can be this tendency to regurgitate stuff that you've absorbed, and often it's unintentional. So I think just stopping and running it through that authenticity filter, like, is this really me? Is this actually what I think? Or, is this something I've absorbed?
And there is a lot of stuff out there, and we can get lost in it so easily, if you're in that startup phase. But indeed, as you keep going as business owners, we tend to keep learning. And I think that there's having some synthesis of all the stuff and creating it as your own, that's where the key is. Especially, we build our own frameworks or our own methodologies. It's taking the learnings and making them your own, because who's to say any one of them's particularly right? They're all right in their own way, but that's not yours. So, but that takes time as well. I would say it can be refined. And I think there's no shame in also admitting when things aren't working. In that growth phase, it's a really good time. Maybe it's 5 years into the business. If you're a fast growing business, maybe it's even 2 years. It could be 10 if it's a slightly slower burn, or I don't think it would be 10. Is to stop and check. And it's that kind of self-check that you're talking about. Is this authentic to us? Is this actually where we want the business to be going? Is this attracting the right talent and the right customers? Is what's working, what's not? And so in that growth phase, you find that there's tends to be this kind of reflection, refresh, refine stage where things get tweaked, whether it's a visual identity or some messaging. Internally, there might be some start to systemize things and to get that consistency. And there's kind of leveling up on everything that's supporting the brand as well. And that's where you tend to find tweaks that are made, and you kind of stepping into your big girl's pants. It's like next phase growth, right? We've got all this experience. We've got all these learnings. I understand now more where I sit, where my position is in the market, and kind of going deeper into that.
Would you say that is it the brand that's evolving as your business grows, or is the brand more of a North Star and it's the branding, the doing of it that tends to evolve?
I would really say that the brand constantly needs to evolve. I mean, it's not sitting still. Nothing sits still. And so it's really important that it's constantly checking on itself and adapting. There's just so many factors, particularly around audience mentalities, motivations, perceptions. It's changing quicker and quicker all the time. What routes to market there are, how do you engage on them, the level of the tiniest bit of time you have to engage with them is just getting shorter and shorter and shorter. You just don't have time to catch their attention. And so there needs to be a longer term view. And, we always say that the vision of the business is the North Star. It's where we're heading. and the brand that sits at the heart of that, there's a long-term view in terms of what this thing is there to do, why it exists, what's the purpose of it. However, it needs to adapt and change with technology, with behaviours, with political and, socioeconomic state, all these things that create change in your audience and what they need from you. You can't sit still. And so I think that, the branding and the marketing and advertising is the easy to fix. I would say easy in inverted brackets is the stuff that's more agile around it to change. I've worked with a big organization last week, up in London. We've been working for 6 months at a huge, big $1 billion global company that they have sat still for so long. And they are still top of their game, but they're scared by the newbies coming in and nipping at their toes. And quite right, because they are appealing to a new audience. They have fresh products. They have completely different tonality and are hitting lots of marks with a younger generation that they just can't compete with. And so we were trying to get this behemoth to think more like an entrepreneur, like a startup, and be agile and to think more innovatively and to take down the fear of knocking down the house and rebuilding it. And that takes an awful lot. And so I think as you're in that growth phase, that's when you should be trying different things and being agile with it and not being too scared. Because when you get to being the behemoth, if you ever get there, if that's what you want, and some people don't, that's fine. It's much harder to make those changes fundamentally.
Yeah, the bigger the ship, the longer it takes to turn.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of cultural issues with that, actually. I would say the brand culture is very important at that stage.
Oh, now that's interesting. The brand culture is the thing that does come in later, doesn't it? That doesn't come in necessarily at the startup phase in the same way as it does, as it has more importance in the growth phase, I guess.
Yeah, I think, and at scale, definitely. I think that there are the newer, new kids on the block are probably understanding that building brand culture from day one is very important. What you find with this slightly older organizations is it's something that's just organically happened over time. And there'll be a culture in the organization that's kind of just happened. And that can be quite toxic and quite difficult to shift. Sometimes it's very positive, and unintentional. And it's just been about, it comes from leadership, right? Shit rolls downhill. So if you've got great leadership, then you'd think you'd have great culture. Not always the case. But the brand culture conversation, it does stem from those values. It does stem to the systems. It does stem to very unsexy stuff like the ops and how things are done and how easy it is for people to do their jobs, how you and enable people to live on their values day in, day out, and supporting them in that as well. And, having that bigger vision in mind, them being aligned to it and understanding it, and the communication, all of these things create that brand culture. And so that's again, very difficult to shoehorn back, but not impossible to address. And also I think it's really important that you have business leaders that are really willing to see what's the reality. So sometimes if you do qualitative research in an organization, which we always do when we do intakes with teams, we'll get someone from finance and marketing and the tech team and whatever, and you'll have a really great, well-rounded view of what that organization is from the inside. And then you speak to the CEO and they have a completely different vision or view of what things are. And so it's just trying to bridge that gap. It's very sensitive, but it's really important because ultimately you've got someone with their head up leading the business. And if they're completely out of touch with actually what's going on, then you're in trouble.
So with that in mind, just thinking about the things that maybe don't go as well as they could be when it comes to building a brand, what mistakes do you see happening over and over, at those different phases, that startup phase, that growth phase, and then that scale phase? What do you see coming up time and time again?
From the beginning, probably from every phase, it's going straight to execution. So from startup, it's that jumping straight into stuff that we talked about. So I use a framework called the Double Diamond from the Design Council. And basically it's 2 double diamonds that have 2 expansive pieces and 2 convergent pieces. And it's the discovery. You have to have open up your eyes, just look around you, look at competitors, what's happening in tech, what's happening on the landscape that my organization's in, what's happening with my audiences, what's their behaviors and perceptions. And then you take all that insights together with what your intentions are as an organization. And you go, okay, this is what it means for us. And that's when you create like the brief. That's like, okay, we understand this is our landscape. This is what we're about. Now what? Now we have to design the brand. We have to design what we're about and our packages or our services, our offerings. And that's when you go broad again. It's like, okay, it could look like this. It could sound like this. It could talk like and walk like this. We could have an experience that feels like this. And then when you deliver, that goes convergent again. And that's like when you go, okay, this is our logo. This is our key messaging. This is our positioning. This is our tone of voice. And that's when you get very crystallized with it. But what you tend to find is people at the beginning with the idea, they skip the discovery piece. They skip the definition piece and the brief. They skip the design exploration and testing and that beautiful, juicy, messy stuff that I love. And they go straight to delivery. And that is extremely costly in the long term. In the short term, it's not. And I would say in the short term, it is an investment of time and money and energy. But in the long term, it's not going to serve you well. So I think there is a process to get to a great brand result, and some people want to shortcut it. And I think that that's a huge error that people make time and time again. And that doesn't really skip any of those growth phases. It's just people do.
It's just that's the fundamental error, is people want to speed up the process to get to that end result without doing the right thing,
the hard yakka
in the right order.
Yeah. And I think as you grow, if things aren't working, then people will throw money at the doing. They'll throw money at advertising, at marketing, at the branding. And I will be honest, I've seen it time and time again that marketing will have their head on the block all the time. They'll be blamed for it. Where actually what would be prevalent to do as a leader of the organization is to step back and go, what are our brand foundations? Are they working for us? Are we still on track? Are we still relevant? Which is a really key word when you're talking about brand. Are we actually still speaking to the right audience in the right way, getting them at the right time? Are we compelling? Are we, concise? Like all these things. And they're sometimes too scared to step back and go back to those foundations because, again, it's the biggest ship. It's harder to turn. But sometimes the issues that show up in delivery or in the results, in the sales, they're not just executional problems. They can be very foundational, and it could be about tweaking things internally. It could be getting better communications and clarity for the team. There's all sorts of brand conversations to be had. And the other thing is at scale where people can make errors is just growing without intention or without some sort of idea of why they're growing into certain ways. So brand extensions, sub companies, whatever it is, having some idea. So from an architectural point of view, and the architecture isn't portfolio structure, it's not organizational structure, it's how you join the dots with all of the insights from your consumers, from your offerings, from your strengths as an organization, from all the context of what's happening around. Joining the dots on those and making sense of how you grow and architect the organization is really, really key. And some people don't have intention with that. They'll either say yes to opportunities or, and then try and make sense of it retrospectively. But you can, again, be intentional with that. So I do find that with bigger organizations, we do a lot of brand architecture, exercises. And sometimes it's trying to make sense of what they've done and how they've grown and where there needs to be some adjustment. And sometimes it's, making some tough decisions in terms of, is this right? Or do we need to set up a whole other company structure for this, because this just doesn't fit in the brand that you have now, which is probably where there's an error issue too.
Do you find that you get clients coming to you saying that, right, we need a rebrand? And because I have seen before where companies, I think it's a little bit about what you mentioned just now in terms of if something's not working. So if they feel their marketing's not working, or they haven't got their sales at the level they want them at, etc., but we need to rebrand.
Yeah.
And I have seen a few times now where people have invested chunks of money in what they think is a rebrand. It's actually just changing some colours and logos and aesthetics. And for me, 9 times out of 10, if your marketing and your sales are underperforming, it's because of generally one thing, and that's your messaging.
Mm-hmm.
That tends to be the primary driver for whether your marketing will or won't work.
That's why copywriters are so valuable. That's why I have a great one.
Yeah. Absolutely right. Yeah, definitely. Me too.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like baby in the bathwater, right? It's understanding where the errors are. And I would make a distinction with that. And maybe it's just me splitting hairs, but I distinguish between a refresh and a rebrand. And I think that a lot of people...
Yeah, what is the difference between those?
Yeah, so
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, because what you're saying is that most people go, this isn't working, we have to rebrand and chuck everything out, and and that's what I mean with like knocking the house down and rebuilding it. That to me is a rebrand. That's a huge lift. That internally that can cause a lot of uncertainty and disruption with the team. There's a lot of change management that needs to be kind of considered. It can also be very energizing if it's managed properly in the team, and not just like, we're the C-suite, we're going to deal with it. If you're inclusive in that process, even if it's just through communications, it can be very energizing for the team. But that is right. We're going to go back to our values. We're going to go back to our purpose statement. And even if they're not changed, it's just reaffirming. It's going back and checking, doing the research, doing that discovery piece, and just make sense checking that actually I call them brand roots, or the brand foundations, are solid, and making tweaks and adjustments as you go. That usually does end up with new copy or new branding, but it really is about knocking the house down and starting again. Sometimes, as I say, that's necessary. It is quite a big ask and can take quite a long time. I've been working with a client now just over a year to do that, big company, and we're still not launched yet. It's still about a month away. So, and that's just the start of it, I would say. There's just like a whole slew of stuff that has to come after that. But it's important. It's very important, because actually someone was brave. The CEO was brave, and go, if we're going to be future facing, we need to do this. Then there's the other side, which is the refresh. And I would say that's about a lick of paint, new furniture, stripping off that shitty wallpaper and having, something gorgeous on the wall, like sprucing up the garden, getting new rendering. Like it's tweaking things. So maybe it's a new logo, maybe it's a new identity system, tweaking colors, messaging, new channels to market, trying new things on social. It could be a refresh of how you're doing things now as you are, rather than completely changing the whole thing.
Right.
And I think that some people in organizations get scared because they think they have to do everything. Whereas actually sometimes, to your point, it could just be a simple tweak of messaging, or finding a new market, or finding a new distribution network that can really turn things around.
So just thinking in terms of the work you do so amazingly with your clients, if someone listening has a business, they've built a brand, they feel like there's a problem with how their business is running at the moment in terms of the performance isn't where they want it to be, and they have a feeling that something needs refreshing, something needs tweaking. Is that something they can come to you and articulate that, and you can give them your perspective? And, is that the kind of thing they can come and work with Box Creative on?
Yes. Again, as long as they're not a dick. No dicks allowed.
Just remember, folks. No dicks allowed.
That's my one rule.
Yes.
I mean, I do appeal to a certain type of organisation, and I love working with particular business leaders and non-profits and foundation leaders and teams. But yes, that is absolutely something that we can talk about. I offer a consulting service as well as the full-blown sort of, I call it the brand greenhouse, which is end-to-end to kind of getting you up to your starter kit, but beyond a brand build and starter kit, I offer consulting services as well, which again, that's down to the business leader or the person I'm speaking to. They set the agenda. We have expertise in so many areas that we can bring in to support them with whatever problems they're having. And sometimes it's just articulating where that source issue is, because like you say, the symptoms can show up somewhere where that's actually not the problem. So, right. But we can talk. Yeah, by all means, reach out and we can have a chat about it. The misconception of what brand means sometimes they'll be surprised with what the process can offer them. And I've been working with an organisation recently, and she said, when we started this exercise, I had no idea that this is what brand meant, that really getting under the skin of the founder or the history or the intention of the organisation. We went real deep dive into the team and the trustees and everything, and turning it into a really beautiful, compelling story and design and offering and concept of what this new brand was going to be. It really surprised her as the executive director. She was like, I just didn't know that this is what brand was, and I think, again, that's the evolving understanding of the power that brand can have in an organisation. And I'm here for it with bells on.
Do you know, as you were saying that, I think working with you and with other branding people in my world, in my connections, it has been a massive eye-opener to me too. I don't think I really understood properly what brand was. So, and I kind of, my area of expertise is business. It's understanding business. So I think I believe it's really common that people don't understand what brand is, not fully, and what it can do for their business.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a fully matured, fully formed and expressed brand can do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's empowering, gives you confidence, and you're kind of I wouldn't say you're in the driving seat, but there's an element of control over things that it reduces fear. And anxiety. Can give a real sense of clarity.
It also reduces the number of decisions you have to make. And as a leader, I think sometimes decision fatigue is real. It can be exhausting having to make what feel like a lot of important decisions all the time, every day, when it comes to, how you market your business, who you want to work with, what's the best way to get sales. All of those things, I think, are really strong brand roots, as you call them, strong brand roots. It reduces the number of decisions because you have so much clarity around exactly what your business is, what it stands for and who it serves, that things you would have agonized over making decisions on are crystal clear. It's like, well,
it doesn't make sense for us.
I have to make.
Yes.
I know it doesn't make sense. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. It's a filter.
It simplifies business.
Yeah. It makes you much more agile. It makes, it is a filter. It's the shit filter. It's like, no, this isn't for us. That's not for us. This is definitely for us. It does help you with decision making. What to do and what not to do is equally important. And like you say, when there's so many things to consider, anything that supports with getting clarity on decision making is valuable. And
100%.
The other thing I'd say is that's important is it can often be a little bit of a battle as well. We have branding versus marketing, and we have business versus brand strategy. They aren't competing. Again, they are neighbours. One cannot exist without the other. I might argue that brand strategy can inform business strategy, but that's just my opinion because that's the world I come from. But certainly the business...
I completely agree. And I probably sit more I obviously sit more in the business strategy camp, and I would agree brand strategy absolutely should inform business strategy.
Yeah. I think that it's vital that people shift their perceptions that branding is just about the stuff that comes in at the end when decisions are being made, and that it can be a real powerhouse to make better decisions of greater value in the long. And it's a long term strategy to outmaneuver the competitors. That's another Martin Neumeyerism. That is what brand can help you do.
Yeah. Amazing. Lauren, how can people listening reach out to you? How can they find out more about working with you?
Well, I have a website. Can you believe?
What?
I do. It's Box.
Next, you're going to tell me it's an incredibly beautiful, amazing to look at website.
Well, I don't know.
Fantastic messaging.
I've looked at it for so long, I can't see it any more objectively. Someone can tell me if it is or not.
Trust me, it is.
It's box-creative.co.uk. And I'm on LinkedIn, just search Lauren Jones and Box Creative, and I'm around and, fairly active on there. So there's a lot on there for people to kind of noodle on. There's some fun stuff too, on my website, but, reach out on there. As I say, I do have also a brand roots course, which is the kind of the foundational stuff, which I'm happy to gift to people. If you want to more of a DIY approach, if you're in that, what does it look like kind of phase, just contact me and I'll gift you that.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. Can we put a link to that in the show notes? I think people will definitely want to take you up on that. So that would be great.
Yes, absolutely. So, as I say, I'm open to hearing from anyone. I'm here to champion women doing great work and nonprofits changing the world. And it's, any tiny part I can play in the great work that they do. I'm all for it.
And you're so good at it.
Oh, bless you. Thank you.
Lauren, thank you so much for coming on today, and I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Bye for now. I hope you enjoyed this episode and that getting our heads together this week has filled your mind with what's possible. If you love the show, would you do me a massive favour, please? Would you leave a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts? It would really help me put more heads together, reach more ears and expand more minds. Until next week, bye for now.